So, welcome to today's class. Today, we'll be learning how to write the discussion essay. We'll be learning, just like we did with the previous essays, the opinion essays, and the advantages and disadvantages essay. Today, we'll be learning how to approach the discussion essay. So, should you be faced with the discussion essay in your exam, you'd use this exact same strategy to write your essay, and you should be certain to score a band 7, 8, or 9. So, come with me on this. So today's question is: some people believe that capital punishment should not be used. Others, however, argue that it should be allowed for the most serious crimes. Discuss both views and give your opinion. You should write at least 250 words. Now, when given a question like this in an exam, what's the first thing you should do? The natural reaction or for a student who is not prepared for the exam is to dive right in and start writing without a plan, but that's one sure way to score a very poor band. So the proper thing to do is to plan your essay, and that begins with your question analysis. So what is this question analysis? Let's look at that in the next slide. The question analysis involves doing three things. That is identifying topic words, identifying your micro topic words, and the instruction words. Now, when you identify these three things, it will help you to break down the prompt and write on what is expected of you in response to the question instead of writing something that's totally off point. So first of all, let's see what these three elements of the question analysis are, beginning with the topic words. So what are the topic words? Topic words are a word or a group of words that represents the broad subject of the question, more like a universal set of the discourse. You could refer to them as a theme. If you're watching a movie that has a lot of fight scenes, you naturally refer to that as an action movie. The same thing applies to the topic words help you identify or pick out what the theme of the question actually is. Looking at this question on the right, I want you to pause this video and guess what the theme of this question is before playing the video to see if your guess was actually right. Now, the topic word or the topic words for this essay is capital punishment. If you are right or wrong, it doesn't matter. You're only here to learn. So if you are right, good for you. If you are wrong, now you know better. So the topic word for this essay question is capital punishment because this represents the broad theme. You're asked whether or not capital punishment should be stopped or if it should be preserved for a select kind of serious crimes. So everything is centered around capital punishment, and that's what qualifies it as the theme or the topic word for this question. Now over to the micro topic word. Now these micro topic words are words that tell you exactly what part of the broad theme you should discuss in your essay. Remember, we just agreed that the topic words, which could be referred to as the theme of the question for this essay, is capital punishment. Now, without micro topic words, you could go on to discuss capital punishment with reference to when it began and why it was implemented, but that's not really the question. The question now is whether or not capital punishment should be stopped entirely or if it should be preserved only for the most serious crimes. So now the micro topic words are the words that help you identify that they are not asking you to talk about the history of the capital punishment, but as capital punishment relates to where it should be stopped, whether it should be stopped or whether it should be preserved for a certain kind of crimes. So, having explained what I've explained, look at this question and guess what you think the micro topic words are. Pause the video and then play it after you must have made your guess and then check if your guess is right or wrong. So the micro topic words for this question include some people, believe, argue, allowed, most serious crimes. Why? Because these tell you exactly what you should discuss about the topic words. Like the people who believe it should be stopped and the people who believe it should not be stopped entirely, but it should be preserved for the most serious crimes. And if you notice, I didn't write out every single word from the question. I just picked out the major words. I didn't include words like that, it, be. Those words are not really necessary in this sense. You might ask further, why these particular words? Why do these particular words qualify as the micro topic words? The word some people tells you that now not everybody believes that the capital punishment should be entirely stopped. That's what this some people does there, and that's why it's selected as a micro topic word. So you're discussing capital punishment with reference to the belief of some people as it opposes the belief of a certain group of other people. Then belief, you know that it's a belief of people. You know that it's an argument, and that's what makes this a discussion essay. People discuss on opposing views about a topic. Allowed, most serious crimes. So all of these, you've now seen how they come together to tell you exactly what to discuss about the broad theme, capital punishment. So now, not pinpointing or not selecting your micro topic words could risk overgeneralization. Like I said earlier, if you do not identify the micro topic words, you risk discussing the theme with respect to what is not being asked in the question. So you should always make attempts to discover your micro topic words, because when you don't, you discuss the topic too generally and you lose marks on task achievements. Remember, I said one of the marking criteria for the IELTS is task achievement. Task achievement entails answering the question that was asked you. So if you're asked what is the relationship between capital punishment as it relates to being applied generally or being reserved for serious crimes, and you go on to start writing about the history of capital punishment and how effective it is, you will be wrong. You lose your entire marks on task achievement because that is not the question you were asked. So always try to identify your micro topic words after you must have identified your topic words. So now over to instruction words, which are the third group of words you should identify while doing your question analysis. So what are instruction words? They are pointers. They are pointers to the type of essay you need to write. Remember, I said in the IELTS writing task 2, there are different types of essays that you could be faced with. So you just need to know how to write every one of these essays because you do not know the exact essay that's going to be presented to you on that day. So for this particular essay, we are dealing with the discussion essay. That's what we have here in red. And what makes the question a discussion essay? Let's find out. It's the instruction words. And what are the instruction words for this question? Simple. Discuss both views and give your opinion. So it almost always comes in this format. Discuss both views and give your opinion. So they could just ask you to discuss both views, and they could ask you to discuss both views and give your opinion. So the strategy for both formats are similar with just a slight difference to both of them. And we're going to see that as we proceed in the course of this lecture. So it's a discussion essay, and because it requires that you discuss both views and give your opinion, you should discuss both views without forgetting to state your position in each main body paragraph. Now, because they say give your opinion, you should do this. But in a situation where they said, where the question reads, just discuss both views only without stating your opinion anywhere. But oftentimes, this is how the question comes: discuss both views and give your opinion. So let's put everything together, everything we've identified from our question analysis. That's the topic phrase, the micro topic words, and the instruction words. We agree that the topic phrase includes capital punishments. The micro topic words include some people believe, argue, most serious crimes not be used. And the instruction words are discuss both views and give your opinion. And this is the question on the right. So now we are done with question analysis. What's the next thing you should do in the exam to write your essay? You should generate ideas. And the question analysis is the first step. It helps you identify those important group of words. And not only does it do that, it helps you generate ideas using the coffee shop method. So what is this coffee shop method? It's simply turning the question into a direct question, like a question that you would ask a friend over a cup of coffee in a coffee shop, like the name implies. So there are four steps to this. What are these steps? You immediately turn the essay into a direct question. You answer the question immediately without overthinking it. You ask yourself, why did I give this answer? And then you give an example to support your reasons. So let's see how we are going to apply that. So this is us applying the coffee shop method. This is the question on the left, and on the right, you can see I turn the question into a direct question, and the direct question reads simply, should the death penalty be stopped or not? The answer to that question is yes. You can decide to say no, but make sure that whatever answer you give is an answer that it's easy for you to explain. Your ideas do not need to be magnificent. They do not need to be very, very logical and impressive. They just need to be simple ideas that you can generate simple examples to explain. So why my answer? Because innocent people might be wrongfully accused. examples to back up my answer, example that supports view 1, an example that concedes view 2 but reemphasizes support for view 1. Remember, unlike opinion essays where both your points are in support of your opinion, this is a discussion essay, and it is required that you discuss both views. You're not only discussing the view that you support, you have to discuss the view you support and the view you do not support. Another difference to this is while you're discussing both views, you should always re-emphasize your opinion in each of the body paragraphs where you discuss opposing views, because they ask for your opinion in the instruction words. Remember, the instruction words read, discuss both views and give your opinion. Now we've applied the coffee shop method to generate ideas. Now these ideas we generated are going to form the founding block for our introduction, which is the building block for the rest of the essay. So the next thing is to understand how to structure our essay. And because of time constraints, we recommend the four paragraph structure for all type 2 essays. So this four paragraph structure makes it easy for you to write your essay and structure it in such a way that you're certain of getting marks that are requisite to travel out of the country or get your dream job, whatever you might be writing these exams for. So the four paragraph structure includes writing an introduction, writing your first and second body paragraphs, and then a conclusion. So that's simple as that. Now we're going to see how the question and the results of the question analysis and the coffee shop method are important to this four paragraph structure. Now these are the expanded format of the four paragraph structure for both the opinion essays and the discussion essays. I just want you to see the slight difference between both essay types. Now in the opinion essays, you'd have four paragraph structure, just like every other essay. Your first paragraph being the introduction, and that's the same with the discussion essay. Then your two body paragraphs in the opinion essay discuss your views, the reasons you give to support your stance. Remember, the opinion essay is all about your opinion, and then you conclude by summarizing the main points that you made in the opinion essay. But for the discussion essay, your two body paragraphs are not discussing your opinions, they are discussing both views that have already been presented to you in the question. And what are the views in this question? The first view includes whether the capital punishment should be completely stopped. That's one view. And the other view is if it should be preserved only for some serious kinds of crimes. So these are the two views that you'll be discussing in your body paragraph. So you dedicate one body paragraph 1 to one of the views and dedicate body paragraph 2 to the other view. Whichever you decide to write first, it doesn't matter. So that is what you need to do. And then because the question says you should not only discuss both views but give your opinion, in each of these body paragraphs, it is expected that you state exactly what your opinion is at the end or somewhere in these paragraphs. Because okay, for example, if you're of the opinion that capital punishment should be preserved for the most serious crimes, you have to find a way to state that opinion in both body paragraphs. The idea is whether or not you agree with a particular point of view that you're writing about in a particular main body paragraph, you should always remember to re-emphasize your opinion in that paragraph. This is to say, if you are writing points that support an opposing view, you should end that paragraph with something that re-emphasizes your opinion. We'll see how we do this as we proceed. It will get clearer. Now, over to the introduction. As the name implies, it's the beginning of your essay, but the most important because it serves as a plan for the rest of the essay. It comprises of a paraphrase of the question, a thesis statement, and an outline statement. We've said this in previous classes, but just as a recap, I'll go over what they are. A good introduction contains three parts: the paraphrase to the question, a thesis statement, and an outline statement. And we said paraphrasing simply means replacing some keywords with synonyms. That's one way to paraphrase. Or you could paraphrase by changing the word class or changing the sentence structure or a combination of any one of the methods, any one or two of the methods mentioned earlier. So after paraphrasing the question, the next thing you should do is write a thesis statement. And as I said before now in other classes, the thesis statement is simply a statement that points to the examiner what your opinion is about the topic you're writing about. And then the outline statement is a statement that contains examples to support your opinion, mostly in the order that you're going to discuss them in the essay. So for the opinion essay, remember we discussed that the outline statements would carry two examples that would support your opinion. But in the discussion essay, which is what we're handling right now, it's quite different in the sense that you are asked to discuss two opposing views, and then you need to give examples that support an opposite view as well as an example that supports your own view. So these are the two types of examples you're going to be giving in your outline statement, not just examples that support your view, as you would have done if it were an opinion essay. So let's proceed with writing the introduction, beginning with the paraphrase. So on the left, we have the result of our question analysis, and on the right, we have the synonyms of the result of our question analysis. Remember, we replaced capital punishment with the death penalty as a synonym, and so on and so forth. Now, the paraphrasing the topic in proper. Right here above is the question. I highlighted the question in two colors, the yellow part representing the first sentence that makes the question, and the blue part representing the second sentence that makes up the question. On the left, I have the synonyms of the question analysis, the synonyms of the result of our question analysis. And on the right, we have the topic that has been paraphrased using two methods. The first method here, we paraphrase the topic using just synonyms, while the second area here, we paraphrase the topic with a combination of using synonyms and changing the sentence structure. So let's begin with the paraphrase that's made of changing, replacing keywords with their synonyms. So if this is how it reads, it is argued by some that the death penalty should be completely abolished. So this is another way of writing. Some people believe that capital punishment should not be used. So then the second part of the paraphrased topic reads, while others contend it remains necessary for the most heinous crimes. This is simply another way of writing. Others, however, argue that it should be allowed for the most serious crimes. Now you'd ask, why did I use the phrase it is argued? It's safe to use the phrase it is argued for discussion essays because whenever you say there's a discussion, it obviously means that there's more than one aspect to understanding how something is perceived. So where there's more than one aspect to something, there's bound to be arguments. So that is why it is safe to start your discussions essays with it is argued. You could devise another means, but this is what I feel it's easier and you should stick with this for easy idea generation on exam day. So there you have it, the paraphrase using just synonyms to paraphrase. Now over to the second part where we use both synonyms and change of sentence structure to paraphrase. If you notice what I did in the initial question, the yellow the yellow portion was now became the yellow portion, which was the first portion, became the second portion in the paraphrase, and then the blue portion became the first in the paraphrase. Now, the yellow portion in the original question talked about people who are in support of the capital punishment being abolished, being stopped, while the blue portion talks about people who are not in support of the capital punishment being completely abolished. Rather, they suggest that it should be preserved, it should be reserved for the most serious crimes. Now, I took that and changed it. I made the portion that spoke about capital punishment being reserved for the most serious crimes. I made it become the first part of the sentence, and then I made the portion that talked about capital punishment being abolished. I made it become the second part of the sentence. So that's how you change the sentence structure. Then I went further to replace the keywords with synonyms. Now, what you should understand is that when you could decide to use just a change in sentence structure while leaving every other word the way they were in the question, and you still score equal marks with someone who made use of synonyms as well. So if you can't find the synonyms to some words, it's better you leave the words they are rather than replacing them with synonyms that would be inappropriate. Now, this over to the thesis and the outline statements. We've successfully written our paraphrase statements. We've paraphrased the topic, and mind you, we are going with. I just showed you how to paraphrase using two different methods. But for the sake of this essay, we're going to be using the first paraphrase topic here. Over to the thesis and outline statement. Thesis for discussion essays. This informs the examiner on the side you have chosen to support. The instruction words tell you how your essay should be structured. So, like I said earlier, the thesis point out to the examiner what your opinion is about the topic. The instruction words tell you, signal to you whether the question is an opinion essay, discussion essay, and advantages and disadvantages essay, and so on and so forth. For the outline statement, this follows immediately after the thesis. It tells the examiner how you intend to structure your essay to ensure coherence. In this essay type, the thesis will explore reasons to support both views, but ultimately emphasize your personal opinion in each main body paragraph. This is what I said earlier when I said the main point is that you should always try to emphasize or restate your opinion in each of the body paragraphs, regardless of the points that you established earlier in the paragraph. So on the right here is just the same explanation of the thesis and the outline statement we discussed in the last slide. And on the right here, we have the thesis and the outline statement written out in accordance to what we discussed. So the thesis for this essay would be, this essay agrees with the former view because the risk of executing innocent people outweighs any perceived benefits. If you remember the topic was about completely abolishing the use of capital punishment or reserving it for the most serious crimes. So when I say this essay agrees with the former view, I'm referring to the first view that supports the abolishment of capital punishment, for reason being that executing victims could lead to executing innocent people because people might be wrongfully accused only to find out that they are innocent after they've been eliminated. So the outline is, it will first discuss capital punishment as a deterrent. When I say it will, it's because this I'm referring to the essay, and I've already said this essay in the previous sentence. Remember, the thesis comes before the outline, so it's safe to say it will because we've already said this essay. So by saying it will, you're saying this essay will. It will first discuss capital punishment as a deterrent before explaining why life imprisonment is a safer and equally effective approach. Now, what we are doing here is we've given examples to back up two entirely different opinions. Discussing capital punishment as a deterrent is an example that would support the view that is in support of preserving capital punishment for the more serious crimes, while explaining that life imprisonment is a safer and equally effective approach. Is an example that would support those who disagree that capital punishment should be continued. That is to say, it supports those who agree that capital punishment should be stopped. So you've seen what we did. We began with the side that we disagree with. That is those who agree that capital punishment should be reserved for the most serious crimes. That is to say that they do not want a complete abolishment of capital punishment. So in the discussion essay, you can start with any view, not anyways, but it's preferable you start with the view that you do not agree with, so that at the end of that particular paragraph, you can start re-emphasizing your opinion, and the emphasis of your opinion would serve as a beginning portion of the next paragraph. So everything would flow seamlessly. And then the rest of your essay will be dedicated towards supporting the view that you agree with. So that's the proper way to do it. You start with the view that you disagree with and then go on to discuss the view that you agree with. Now we have the introduction all set. I've brought it. This on the left we have the question, and on the right we have the three parts of the introduction which we've put together, and they include the paraphrase of the question, the thesis, and the outline. Now read this, internalize it, understand what we've done, and try to write something on this topic using the same principles that we've applied. You could decide to support the side I supported, or you could decide to support the side that is opposite what I supported. So it doesn't matter. Just stick to what is easier for you to explain. So when you do that, you find out that the ideas would come to you easier. So pause the video, make sure you do that, and then click on play to watch the rest of the video. Like we said earlier, any good essay should have four parts: an introduction, two main body paragraphs, and a conclusion. Now we're done with the introduction. The next thing that should follow is your first main body paragraph. For every main body paragraph, you should follow a particular structure which I termed the PEW structure. It's simply an acronym that stands for point, explanation, example, and a link. The point there is simply a sentence that restates the example you gave in your outline statement, one of the example, usually the first example. So it's a point that paraphrases that example you gave to support your opinion in the outline statement. And then the second sentence should be an explanation of that example, how that example is sufficient to drive home your point. And then the third sentence should be an example, probably a live scenario, something that happened previously, or a news report, or the result of a research, or something you just made up. Now, that's one thing you should note in the IELTS exam. You could make up examples, even things that did not really happen. But the only condition to that is that whatever you're making up, it should be logical enough. It should be something that is believable, something that could happen in real life, not something that's impossible, like a shark attacking somebody in the toilet. So your example should be realistic. Your made up example must be realistic. And then the link, which is the last sentence of your main body paragraph, it's not compulsory, but doing it ensures that you have more depth to your writing, and it guarantees a higher band score, probably an 8 or a 9. The link there is simply a sentence that summarizes the whole theme of that particular paragraph and links what has been discussed there to the introduction, to what was said in the introduction, where you're going to see how we'll do that as we proceed. So on the left here, we have the components of the introduction, and why we have it here is because I told you the introduction is arguably the most important part of your essay, because it serves as a building block for the rest of your essay. And then I said in the previous slide that the first sentence of your main body paragraph is a sentence that paraphrases the reasons or the ideas you listed in your outline statement. So if you notice, I've numbered the two parts of the outline statement that talk about the two opposite views of the discussion. And the first part is, it would first discuss capital punishment as a deterrent, while the second part is before explaining why life imprisonment is a safer and equally effective approach. Now, this first part is going to be discussed in this first body paragraph, and then it's going to conclude with a link. And we're going to use the link here to re-emphasize our stand. And our stand in this essay is in support of the people who want the death penalty to be completely abolished. So what I like to advise people to do in the discussion essay is, you should begin your main body paragraph. Your first main body paragraph should be talking about the side you disagree with, so that when you end that, you're going to end it with a statement that reemphasizes your opinion. And then that's going to be a serve as an introduction to the following paragraph, which will be completely about the side that you support. So in this case, we are opposing the people who want death penalty to be continued, but reserved for the most serious crimes. We are opposing those people, and then we are in support of the people who want death penalty to be completely abolished. So in this first paragraph, despite the fact that we're going to begin with conceding that preserving the death penalty and using it effectively is a valid point, we are going to end by highlighting the drawbacks of that approach, that strategy, and that's going to be a starting point for the next main body paragraph. So let's begin. We begin by discussing capital punishment as a deterrent. So this is an advantage of not abolishing the capital punishment, which is an example that supports the second group of people who want capital punishment to remain, and we are opposing that in this essay, remember. So we started by restating the point. That is, it will first discuss capital punishment as a deterrent. In another way, we paraphrased it. We said, on the one hand, supporters of capital punishment argue that it serves as the ultimate deterrent for severe crimes. That's another way of saying capital punishment serves as a deterrent. So the explanation to what we just said is, they believe that knowing the price for offenses like premeditated murder is death will discourage potential criminals. Now we now went further to cite an example where this is how to use the PEW structure in real time. For example, the United Nations website reports on jurisdictions that maintain the death penalty for serial killers have shown significantly fewer murder occurrences in those areas. Now, this is a completely made up example. I didn't research this, but this is something that it's possible. This is something that could have happened. So it makes a lot of sense, and it is an example that illustrates the point I'm making in this paragraph. Now, the link, remember I said the link is kind of a summary of what is being said. It could be a summary, it could be something that links all that has been said in that paragraph to the introduction, or it could be something that you use, a sentence that you use to re-emphasize your opinion, particularly in this case, which is the discussion essay. So we now went further to say, however, remember, whenever you use the word however, it signifies to the reader that you're about to change your opinion or say something contrary to the major theme of the paragraph at the beginning point. So, however, because the law can be unfairly influenced by humans, this can lead to the execution of wrongfully accused victims. So, you see what we've done? We started by saying things that support or concede the validity of the people who support the continuous use of capital punishment. We gave a point to explain that. We gave an example to support that. Okay, the United Nations has reported that in regions where death penalty is still in practice, crime rate is drastically less compared to other regions where it's not being practiced. So all those are in support of the people who want death penalty to be continued. Then we now ended by saying that the law can be unfairly influenced by humans, and if that is the case, most people who are convicted of crimes, even when they are innocent, will be wrongfully killed. And then that is a subtle way of emphasizing your stance. So that is why I said the link in the discussion essay most likely be a starting point for what you're going to be discussing in the next main body paragraph. Remember, I said in the discussion essay, your first main body paragraph, I advise you to start with the side you disagree with. So that is what we did here. And then we are ending by emphasizing the side we agree with, which is going to be a starting point for the next main body paragraph, which will be totally about everything we agree with. So let's look at the main body paragraph two. Okay, this is the introduction and the main body paragraph one that we've done. So pause this video, read it, and try to make sense of it based on all that we've discussed before playing it, so you see how we're going to put together the main body paragraph two. So on the left again, I brought the introduction because, like I always say, it's the building block for the rest of the essay. We've made use of the first part of the outline statement to construct our main body paragraph one, and now we're going to make use of the second part of the outline statement which is what we have here to construct our main body paragraph two, which is what we have on the right hand side. In this paragraph, we're going to be explaining why life imprisonment is a safer and equally effective approach. This is obviously in support of the idea that we're backing, that capital punishment should be stopped. So the first point, how do we say life imprisonment is a safer and equally effective approach? How do we paraphrase it to form a new sentence? On the other hand, now take note of this. On the other hand, remember how we started the first main body paragraph. We started by saying on the one hand, then the second main body paragraph. Now we're starting with on the other hand. Opponents assert that capital punishment should be outlawed. A view this essay strongly supports due to the reversibility of the sentence. Now that is a very brilliant way of stating that life imprisonment is a safer and equally an effective approach compared to the death penalty, because it's effective one, and it prevents the occurrence of eliminating innocent people. So to explain further, we said the justice system is flawed, and relying on the death penalty carries the risk of executing wrongly convicted individuals. If new evidence exonerates the accused, a posthumous pardon is meaningless, whereas life imprisonment allows for the correction of judicial errors. So you've seen, if you observe it, you find that we consistently re-emphasize that we are in support of this, and we consistently state why we're in support of it. We say that if new evidence exonerates the accused, a posthumous pardon, which is simply a pardon that is granted when somebody is found not to be guilty, and most times it comes when the person has already been executed. So we are saying that posthumous pardon is meaningless, whereas life imprisonment allows for the correction of judicial errors. Example to illustrate: Now, take note of this sign. This is called signposting. It will be inappropriate for you to just after the for you to just say advanced DNA testing has exonerated numerous death row inmates globally. Always signpost using this kind of words to illustrate, or when you want to state an example, you say, for example, to illustrate, or for instance. That signpost to the examiner that you're trying to give an example to support your view or to support what has been discussed earlier in the paragraph. To illustrate, advanced DNA testing has exonerated numerous death row inmates globally who were previously found guilty. Now, the link. Therefore, avoidance of irreversible mistakes makes long term imprisonment the ethical choice. Now, rather, if you're observant, you find out that in the first main body paragraph, since we gave points that validates the opposite side's view, that is, the people who support the use of death penalty, we gave points that death penalty will serve as a deterrent to prevent people from committing similar crimes. We now ended with a link that suggested the drawbacks of that approach. And then that sentence being something that brings out the drawbacks of a particular approach is a subtle way of emphasizing that we are not in support of that approach, but we are in support of the approach that completely wants the abolishment of the death penalty. Then this link we are doing here is doing a similar thing in the sense that it is re-emphasizing the importance of abolishing the death penalty. Therefore, avoidance of irreversible mistakes makes long-term imprisonment the ethical choice. So we are suggesting an approach which is not death penalty, but an alternative to death penalty in support of our ideas that death penalty is not good. Now we're done with the two main body paragraphs. If you put everything together from what we've done from the beginning, we have the introduction, the main body paragraphs one, and the main body paragraphs two. If you read all this together, you find out that they flow logically into one another and they don't seem like disjoint parts that we are trying to force into a single whole. They are completely connected sentences, and you're going to receive marks for coherence and cohesion if you do this on the exam. So now we are done with the introduction, main body paragraphs one and two. Now we'll head over to the conclusion, which is the ending of your essay. It's quite simple, but you just have to understand what you need to do and what is expected of you. So conclusions are used for final positioning and summary of already discussed points in main body paragraphs one and two. New points should never be introduced in the conclusion. If you go on to your conclusion and you start talking about entirely new points that you didn't state in your introduction and you didn't discuss in your main body paragraphs, you will totally throw the examiner off balance and you lose marks for that. We recommend the two sentence structure for conclusions, a paraphrase of the discussed points and a paraphrase of the thesis statement. So this also emphasizes to you the importance of the introduction. Remember, the outline in the introduction was the foundation for our two main body paragraphs, and now we are still referencing the introduction to structure our conclusion. So this tells you that spending a little more time on the introduction guarantees that the rest of the essay is going to be perfectly written. So if you fail to write a good introduction, the rest of your essay would suffer as well. For discussion essays, the discussed points include both sides of the argument, not just your opinion. I'm always trying to re-emphasize the difference, the minute differences between the discussion and the opinion essays because they are similar. And if you don't get the clear-cut difference between them, you might write an opinion essay when you're asked for a discussion essay, and then you lose marks on task achievement. Now, this is the introduction on the left. I brought it here because we need it to carve out our conclusion. Remember, I said in the conclusion for discussion essays, you should paraphrase or summarize the two points that you discussed in your main body paragraphs, and the 2 points are one on this opposite side's view and one the other point on the side that you support. Then after that, you could do that in one or two sentences, and then after that, you paraphrase the thesis statement. Thesis statement was simply a statement you made in the introduction, stating clearly what your stance is in the essay. So the point one here from the outline statement, which is what we need to paraphrase again, and which is what we discussed in main body paragraph one, is that capital punishment serves as a deterrent. So how do we paraphrase that? We wrote to conclude. See how I started again. You don't just starts the conclusion with, while some advocate for the death penalty as a necessary deterrent, you should always try to signpost. And I always advise you stick to two methods. They are not going to give you more marks for using very, very spicy words. You should focus on generating ideas and properly structuring your ideas to get the maximum marks that you need. So stick to that to conclude. And in conclusion, so any one of these two will do perfectly fine. Try to stay away from using phrases like finally, in a nutshell, as those are quite informal. And also stay away from using phrases like in general. That signifies you're trying to make a general statement, not a conclusion. So stick with to conclude and in conclusion. So pick any one of those and use them in all your essay types. It just makes the job a lot easier. So to conclude, while some advocate for the death penalty as a necessary deterrent, this is another way of writing the first point in the outline statement that points out to the fact that capital punishment is a deterrent. I believe it should be universally prohibited. The second point is that life imprisonment is a safer and equally effective approach. This saying that life imprisonment is safer and better than the death penalty is similar to saying that death penalty should be prohibited. So, paraphrase of the thesis, what do we say in our thesis? We say that this essay would agree with the former view. And what is the former view? That the death penalty should be completely abolished. So, this essay would agree that death penalty should be completely abolished because the risk of executing innocent people outweighs any perceived benefits. How do we say that in the how do we paraphrase that to add to our conclusion? This is because life imprisonment adequately protects the public without the morally unacceptable risk of executing innocent individuals. So you've seen how we've put our essay together, and this is the whole essay. You should pause this video, read it, digest it, and try to create something similar to what we've done. After you do that and you repeat the same for other essay topics, you should be confident about writing a very good discussion essay. As a matter of fact, if you write in an essay like this, you should score nothing less than a band 8 on the writing section. So thank you very much and see you in the next class.